All right, so today we're going to talk about the nature of creativity. Now, creativity is an interesting thing because it's sort of this idea of making something out of nothing is sort of one element you could say, or another element would be, um, a surprising perspective. Taking a sip of that's not part of creativity, and and yet it's really kind of interesting to think about, is there such a thing as creativity? So, on the one hand, creativity, you can assemble things in new ways, right? But are you really, you know, can you really have information that did not exist before, right? Like, do you have the ability to make something genuinely new? And on some level, yes, right. So like you look at some, like for instance, look at software, right? So there's software that is genuinely new in the sense that it performs a task or a purpose in some way that no software did before, right? At some point, so you could say, well, that's creative. Um, you could take pieces of wood and build a house in a way that's never been done before, and you could say, well, that was creative. Um, so in the sense of like making something that has never existed before, I think creativity is a real thing. Now, if you're to define creativity as uh, having a new thought that nobody has ever thought before, what am I? I'm trying to kind of explain what I'm thinking here. I think like there may be real creativity that is like actually like very almost like generative, if you will. Like you actually are generating new thoughts. Um, Go back and see my video on how original is your thinking if you want to explore that idea. Um, but I think for the most part, creativity is not okay. So when God made the world, right, that was creative. He was very creative. He is very creative. That's not normally the exact creativity we get to use because we don't like generate matter out of thin air, right? So if we build a house in a creative manner, what we're doing is we're taking the materials that already exist, or we're making it, arranging molecules in a different way to get a new material, um, and then we're building that house. And so it's mostly creativity. I think in the end is mostly arranging things in a new way. Okay, so uh, either it's a fresh perspective, a fresh way of organizing information, or building something that has a fresh output. So like you know, yeah, maybe you use all the same 2x4s that every other builder uses, but you made the house with a different design. Okay, so the architect was creative, and yeah, you could say like there's probably, I mean, there's many things for which there's a first. So in that sense, I think creativity is a real thing, and but it's kind of interesting because I think my default view of creativity is kind of like, wow, it's making something out of nothing, whereas usually it's making something fresh out of things that already exist. I think is probably the better way to define creativity.